Hello and welcome to the latest installment of 32 Jackpot Marketing Secrets with History's Greatest and Craziest Persuaders with David Lowenthal. I am David Lowenthal, and today I'm going to talk to you about two individuals who are worthy of discussion in this series. They don't have a lot of politically, but they both, in each in their own ways, around the same time, discovered a jackpot marketing principle that can really increase sales, donations, visibility, fame, fortune, all of the things that persuasion can do. They really found the principle that stumbled upon it. And now the two individuals that I'm going to be talking about are one, Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes was a longtime Republican television consultant for people like President Richard Nixon, President Ronald Reagan, and the first George Bush. He later went on to create Fox News, the famous or infamous, depending on whatever your politics are, Fox News. That when it was first started in 1997, really dominated the cable news environment, and still pretty much does to this day. It's taken some hits since his death, but the model that he created is pretty much still intact, and it really dominates cable news, especially the other channels and the other cable channels, and really most other cable channels in general. At least until very recently, it really dominated them. So Roger Ailes is one, and the other is Howard Stern. Completely different guy, New York City shock jock, basically invented like the modern kind of morning time DJ listening show. It's he talks about his story in the great movie, I think it came out in '96, called Private Parts. Really great, hilarious movie. So his rise to fame, even though he had completely different politics, he's on the left, he's very socially liberal, very open about sex and everything like that. Very different from Roger Ailes, but the principle that they both harped on, they both discovered, whether intentionally or not, was the principle of breaking your industry's norms. Now, I first heard about this principle from the publisher of email newsletters, Ben Settle, and I also heard about it from Dan Kennedy, who talks about it in his various books and seminars and things. It's all about the idea that if you see your industry doing one thing, you should run to the opposite way, the opposite path, to at least try doing something different. It might not always work, but when it does, it really does work. And I think both these gentlemen really demonstrated that. First, you have Roger Ailes, who looked at the media environment in 1997 and thought it was weird that you had 3 terms of Republicans in the White House. That had not happened. Relatively conservative, conservative Republicans in Ronald Reagan, not so much in George W. Bush, or George H.W. Bush, but a Republican nonetheless. And you had a giant Republican takeover of Congress in 1994, the so-called Republican Revolution. So you had all these conservative Republican voters out there, and yet where were they being forced to get their news from? They were being forced to get their news from the same old, stale, liberal, big government, progressive, lefty establishment organizations that they didn't trust. Now they were increasingly getting their news from various newsletters and all these different sources, direct mail and all these kinds of things. AM talk radio, which had just really come on the scene in the late 1980s. And I think Roger Ailes, rightfully looked at the environment and says, why don't these people have a cable channel that they can trust, that not only they can trust, but that also shares their values? Why can't they have that? And so he saw the whole media environment going in one direction, or at least that was in one direction, and then he went the exact opposite way and went in a different direction. Said, we're going to be the opposite of everything they are. They're going to be liberal. We're going to be quote unquote fair and balanced. They're going to talk about these issues. We're going to talk about these issues. We're going to really display their values of faith and family and patriotism and loving America and loving the flag and loving the real America and Christian values and things like that. That is what we're going to be. We're going to be a different brand. And they started that, and it was nothing but success from that point on. And they created a whole world around that. They had, Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and, a bunch of others who were really, really successful at creating these, Glenn Beck, that were creating these personalities that had, major fandom. That was very different for CNN and MSNBC, who had very interchangeable personality. They never had any loyal following, and they still don't. And so Roger Ailes is the first example of challenging your industry's norms. And the second one is Howard Stern, who he was dealing in an industry that, one, was heavily regulated in terms of the content that you could produce. It was centralized through bureaucratic progressive regulation that really kind of monopolized the industry and created all these kind of content guidelines. So you had that. He decided, no, there's a whole group of people, just like in Roger Ailes' case, there was a whole bunch of conservative people who were not being targeted, who were not being given what they wanted from the established players. There was also a lot of people who were into, who wanted more raunchy talk, raunchy commentary and conversation. And he goes into it in the movie Private Parts, where he, would air people having sex like on the air, and would tell dirty jokes and would ask guests and callers weird questions and to do weird things. That it all really just spiked the bizarre factor. That I talked about in a previous video where I talk about P.T. Barnum. If you're interested, you can look up that video all about P.T. Barnum and creating freakish copy. He was doing a lot of the same principle, but he was also challenging his industry's norms. He was giving his people something different, and it really turned out to work well for him. And he's still on the air. He's still like a household name across the country. And so that's the lesson of this video is find ways, big, medium, and small, to challenge your industry's norms. So thanks for watching. Tune in next time for the next installment of 32 Jackpot Marketing Secrets from History's Greatest Persuaders. If you're interested in what you like what you've been seeing and you want to see more, you can sign up for my newsletter, davidlowenthal.substack.com. It'll be the link will be in the description. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.